So one thing I so one thing I will say, if you are not
Everybody should be muted at this time, please. Tonight's topics include terminology, terms, words, and phrases. So I'm going to start off by saying, hi, my name is Inez Adams. I reside here in Phoenix, Arizona. I am of a particular age. I've been in the gay community for a great number of years, and I don't profess to know any and everything. The reason for this ongoing chat and discussion is that I think some of the younger people, and I'm going to use some terms that are comfortable for me. I don't mean them to be derogatory to anybody, but I think some of the youth or some of the children or some of the kids in the community don't understand the struggles that it took to get to where we are today. This all stemmed from nameless individuals who felt comfortable referring to themselves with a derogatory word and or slur to me. And because of that, it just sit right in my heart and in my soul. So I thought we need to have a discussion about it. Harold Scott was great enough to suggest we do it on a Zoom because he felt like it'd be a good teaching agent moving forward. So if you are on this Zoom, please understand that you are being recorded. We're going to edit this and just have it in for the archives. So I'm going to start off by saying we're going to discuss words, terms, terminology, and phrases. So some of the words we're going to discuss, and I'm going to just say these words as they are. We're going to discuss the word fag, gay, tranny, the N-word, queer, and ladyboy. If you'd like to add anything to those words, we can. And we're going to understand that some people talk about wanting to take back words as an ownership to somehow devalue the word. And I can understand that on some level. But on another level, if those words were never inflicted upon you to cause harm, how can you take back something that was never given to you in the first place? Can we ponder that question for a moment? For me, I know that we use plain language or kitchen talk when we're around our friends because we're comfortable and we say things that we know are derogatory from mainstream because we feel comfortable and we're just kind of talking amongst our friends. So it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek thing. One of the first words we're going to talk about, because it affects me on multiple levels, is the N-word. If I happen to say the N-word, it's not because it's daily use, or for me, it's just to make a point. And it will just be in the context of this. Moving forward, if we're talking about the N-word, I would prefer we call it the N-word, not necessarily what the word is. Can we all be in agreement on that? Yes. So for me, there was a point in time in life, and I'll just set this up as an example. When I was born, people who looked like me were considered colored. Yes, right, colored. We went from being colored to becoming Negro. From being Negro, we became Black. From being Black, we became African Americans. And that shows the transition of how we move forward with words. I can't fathom a 19, 20-year-old person of color saying that they want to take back the word colored, because I think we all understand that that word is antiquated and it was used to demean people. So when it came to a group of non-binary people referring to themselves as tranny, I'm familiar with that term being a slur. And as a trans woman who's fought long and hard to be recognized as a trans woman or as a woman in general, it just felt like a slap in the face for someone to think they wanted to take back a word that was never used or inflicted upon them. I don't think they've ever been in a workplace and been discriminated upon because someone said they were a tranny. I don't think they've ever been in school and had teachers not want to interact with them or treat them fairly because they were a tranny. I don't think they've ever been turned down for housing because they were a tranny. These are things that have happened to me in my life. So I'm so thankful that we've gone past that word and we've used the word transgender, transgender male, transgender female, trans woman, trans male, or even non-binary at this time. Early on in life, people who lived their lives as me, they were considered by society to be a transvestite. And I think people of trans experience can all agree that we don't want to be called a transvestite. By definition, a transvestite is a person who wears clothing of the opposite sex for a sexual pleasure. Trust me putting on my bra and panties doesn't do anything for a sexual pleasure for me. It just provides me with some support, which I'm thankful for. So that term did not encompass and fit everybody equally. And that's why we were able to derive other words that better described who we were as a people. And I'm thankful for that. If at any time anyone wants to jump in with anything, just raise your hand and we'll go ahead and acknowledge you. And I'll do my best to make sure that we're doing that. So the following along with those words, there are some people who do not like the term queer. Does anyone have any words or terms that offend them? That they would. So if you have a word that you'd like to add to the list, just raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you. You'll state the word and state why it bothers you. Thank you, Harlette.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not there.
No worries. Don't apologize. You can continue to speak, Harlette. Does anyone have any words they'd like to add to the list?
Oh, I tapped. Sorry, I didn't know I'm muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, Giselle Monet from Oklahoma City. Right ahead.
Oh, also be sure to check the chat because some of us put words in the chat. But I put the word cross-dresser.
Okay.
And for me, it's it takes a lot to offend me. I'm usually not offended by words in general, but I know that words are offensive. But that is one that kind of stuck out to me as a drag entertainer. And when I'm like entertaining as a drag entertainer, I don't like to be equated as a cross-dresser because it's not that I'm cross-dressing, I'm dressing up for entertainment. And I feel like there's a difference in those two.
Okay. I added it to our list. Thank you so much. Do you have, does anyone else have any other words they'd like to add? And if so, just raise your hand. I'll add you in, or just unmute and go ahead and say what you want to say.
I threw my hand up, Miss Mia. It's Sassy.
I don't see a picture of you, Sassy, but okay. I do see a hand now. Go ahead. Elder Sassy.
Elder. The word for me actually, and usually I'm much like Giselle, it takes a lot to get me to a point of frustration. The word dyke would be the one that gets me. That would be the one. That would be the only one that will make me throw hands.
And
nothing
why
else.
Why is that word offensive to you?
Because it's still said with such denigration and such disrespect. Like it is still to this day used to be offensive and harmful. Like it's not used in a cute way. Like it's never ever gonna be me and a bunch of my friends walking around saying, "Hey, dyke," that's never gonna happen because that might get you punched in your mouth. So it's still used as an offensive word in that manner.
People are often, Sassy, talking about taking backwards. I remember seeing a group of ladies that were bicycle riders and they called themselves dykes on bikes. How do you feel about that?
For them, that's fine. If that's what they want to call themselves, that's cute. I'm never going to say that for me because that is not how I see myself. And when that word was used, it was used to be derogatory. It was meant to be mean and evil and spiteful. To me, a dyke is a hole in a wall. That's what it is. That's exactly what the definition of a dyke is. It is a nail in a wall meant to place a hole. I am not a hole in nobody's wall. So I don't want to be using the term that's meant to be offensive or rude. And for me, that term specifically is still meant to be offensive and rude.
Thank you for sharing. I do see some other elders on here. I'm going to call you guys out to jump in at any time. Eddie George, Nabby, if you'd ever like to participate, please do. Aaron Harvey, also known as Katia Lee Love. I see you're online as well. You and I are similar in age. I think you're a few months older. If you'd like to participate as well, please do. If I don't call your name, it doesn't mean you're not an elder because some of y'all were young to me back then and you're an elders now, but you're still young. Elder Passion, is there anything you'd like to add to this discussion at this moment in reference to words that we can add to the list? So far, our lists have the F word, which I'm going to say the word, fag, gay, tranny, the N word, queer, ladyboy, crossdresser, and dyke. Would anybody else like to add any words that we can discuss to this conversation? Please just unmute yourself and tell us what the word is and why. Josh Bolin, Michaela K, former Miss Gay America, welcome. Jade McKenzie, welcome, welcome. We invite you guys to join us over here on the Zoom as well. Okay, so we're going to move.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry.
Yes, Giselle, feel free.
I think I might have missed it. What is the ultimate goal out of this discussion tonight?
The
Um,
goal, go ahead.
I saw the word educate and I saw the word I forgot what the other word was.
Enlightenment.
But yes, and I'm one, I found myself in the middle half the time as an elder and as a youth. And I guess I'm trying to understand what the ultimate goal out of this discussion will be. And it's not to be preachy, correct?
Not at all.
Okay.
I'm here to teach. I'm also here to learn. I don't know any and everything, and my age doesn't always equate wisdom. We're here to not necessarily agree, but to come to an understanding of where each person is coming from. There are things in reference to the community that I may not understand. I think sometimes those who are younger than us don't understand how words and terms can be triggering for some of us. And I think it's because those words and terms were never used against this generation. They don't realize all the advancements they were born into because they were never there for any of the struggle. Am I making sense, Giselle?
Yes. And then I wanted to ask, so can we understand the vice versa as well in that?
Most definitely. And I won't know the vice versa unless someone shares that with me.
Yeah. So I was kind of curious who was of the youth in this chat today.
I think it's only fair for those people to reveal themselves, because I don't want anyone to attack them in any way, shape, or form. If they would like to self-identify, then they can do so. I want to kind of have these discussions with the least amount of confrontation possible.
Can I ask, how do you define of the youth? Are you saying currently of the youth or people that grew up in these experiences?
I'm letting people self-identify. If you consider yourself a youth, then you're a youth. I'm 65. So anybody 50 and below is a youth, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, in Phoenix, ironically, in Phoenix, I'm considered an elder and I'm 39. So I'm at a point where I'm much like Giselle, where I'm a youth, but I'm also an elder because I've been doing drag for 10 years. But there are the people that I look up to who are the reason I got into drag, like you, Mia. So there's that middle ground for us who are still considered youth, but are considered elders to the quote unquote youngers. So I fall right in that middle ground too.
Yeah, at my age, I am an elder, but my mother still lives. So my mom, is 23 years older than me. So I'm a youth to her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think it's just perspective on where you fall in the
well, if I could say something, I feel like that's where the disconnect comes from too. It's a lot of people that feel like they're stuck in the middle when in reality they're not, because if you feel like you're an elder, but then when you're around the youth and you're using these words or letting them use these words, that's not being an elder. It's like you can't pick and choose. Like when I'm around my older friends and the older generation, then I'm an elder. But then whenever I hang out with the kids, I'm just like one of them, throwing out slang and everything like that. Like there's got to be a clear line of, if you're going to be an elder, then you got to be the one teaching the kids. You can't expect someone older than you to be teaching. Then you're not an elder. Then you're just a kid.
So let's find a way to define an elder, because I think anybody can be a teacher, regardless of your age and your life experiences. I think anybody can give a teachable moment, and I hope this is a teachable moment. And I'm also here, like I said, again, to learn. For those who want to reclaim and utilize antiquated wording, I would like for maybe them to explain to me why it's so important to, in their mind, take back the power of these words. Because again, to me, those words were never used against them to destroy them or to make them powerless. So I want to understand how they feel they can take back something that was never used to describe them in the first place. I guess that's what I'm not understanding. Does anyone have any response to that?
You have a hand up first.
I don't know where the hand is. I don't. Oh, Madam Brazil, welcome to the chat. Madam Brazil's from Texas. She's a trans activist as well. Madam Brazil, unmute and tell us what you got going on.
Yes. I'm actually stepping out right now to talk. I was actually in a meeting going to the next one. Um, I respect everyone's opinion and point of views. I know, thank you for calling on me right after it happened. I feel like I am one of the ones that I would consider that's in between. I say that simply because everyone knows that I have no problem getting surgeries. You know, I'm one of the girls that I keep up with the standard beauty, the beauty standards and everything, which is the new age thing to do. But I'm one of those girls that fell into getting silicone injections because that was the only thing that was that we had accessibility to because we didn't have all these trans friendly or accepting doctors. So
That's
I do feel like I'm one of the girls that are in between because I've learned from those girls, but yet I'm still young enough that I can connect to the younger crowd. So when Elder Passion, which I completely respect their opinion, stated that we can't talk a certain way around certain people, I have to disagree. It has nothing to do with anything other than understanding your surrounding. It's no difference than when people go to work. You cannot talk and communicate with your employees um, like you would people at home
it's
with your
called code
personal
switching.
life.
Yeah, it's called code switching.
Um,
You do it every day.
yeah, so I feel like you can like have a disconnect of conversations with people. Um, depending the demo, it's just like a drag show. We're entertainers. You perform not what you really want to. A good entertainer will try to go and connect to their crowd and not perform what they just want to perform. You will consider the demographic of the area and the age group, and you
Mhm.
would know how to entertain your audience members. So I feel like when you communicate with people, a bit of you are entertaining because you're entertaining your company. So if I'm speaking to someone who's older, I'm still going to be myself, but I'm going to talk to them differently than I would someone my age or younger. So
Understand.
I feel like that's what unfortunately, like I understand what she was saying, but I would have to, I guess, disagree in that aspect. That's all I was trying to raise my hand about for the ones that I guess that are in between the elders and the new generation. Um, I feel like that's one of that's one of the downfalls of being in between.
Mhm.
That's what we have to do. We have to know how to separate the two because we're those in between people. I can't really talk to these young girls about getting all um, silicone and all this other stuff, girl, because a lot of them are going to doctors and getting it done through insurances. I
Mhm.
didn't have that privilege. You get
Mhm.
what I'm saying?
I understand
So
completely.
I feel like we are constantly battling that in between, but we're always overlooked because it is just what it is. It's we're the in between ones. You know, we have to kind of know what to kind of do. If we go out there and entertain, we can do the old school songs all the time, like the girls before us,
Mhm.
because it looks sickening for them to. It's their age, it's age appropriate. We're still young enough that we got to learn every damn lyric Cardi B is saying, and bitch, we can barely keep up with the damn stuff. But you get what I'm saying? We're that in between
It has
that
to
we
do with
can
life
barely do that.
expectancy, with your life experience.
So yeah,
Well,
so
thank you
yeah,
for.
that's all I wanted to say. I wasn't trying to disagree or do
No, no.
anything with
We're just stating our opinion, so you're perfectly within your right to point your opinion. Thank you so much for sharing. If you want to come back in, let me know. Giselle Monet, you have the floor. Feel free.
I totally agree with Brazil for sure as a person that's in between. It's funny, years ago when I was going to OU, we there was a event where we took the N word and we did like a whole almost like a burning of the word and burying it in the ground
Mhm.
and saying that we while we took back the power, we're trying to negate the word and put the word away. So my stance has always been when it comes to words and taking back power. And you said something about how can you take back power when you were never like it was never targeted. Yes. And is that based off of you knowing that person wasn't, or them stating like I've never been offended by that word? Because like as me, like I know I'm only 35, so I've never been called colored, but I have been called the N word. I have been called the F word. And so for me,
So I think,
I
and if I could interject you for just a split second, I
yeah,
think for you, if someone called you colored, you would laugh about it. I think someone in their 80s being called colored, they would be offended.
correct.
So I think it
Yes.
has to do with life experience. So I think some of the words that the youth are using, they don't understand the negative connotations that were behind those words and how they were meant to keep a person down
I can
because
agree
they've
with
never
that. Yeah.
experienced that.
And what's okay, yes, and I agree with that completely. And I guess my thing would be so like using the N word, for me, I feel like taking power back from a word is not necessarily going around using it because I don't like to use the word N word or the F word. But
Mhm.
I understand that taking the power means that that word no longer offends me if you were to use it to me. I would laugh at somebody calling me the F word or the N word as well because I know that while they're trying to offend me, they don't have that power over me. And I feel like there's power in taking power of the word in that. And I feel like that's important as well. But then I was just thinking about a word because I think what I was trying to get at with the interchanging of like elders teaching the youth and youth teaching the elders, an old word that we have used since the 80s is the term fish, and
Okay.
how that has not now become I've always thought the term was fish was offensive as a person that works in sexual health, and knowing the connotations of that term, I've always thought that that was offensive when it comes to women. And that has become a word that the youth have determined is offensive. But there are elders that feel that it's not as offensive or that will argue that down as well. So that was kind of where I was going towards when it comes to elders educating and us being educated by the youth as well and us being in the middle.
Okay, well, if I can say for my understanding, and I do see some other hands up, I'll be with you in just one moment, to go back to your word, fish. That was something that I want to say came about in the late 80s, early 90s, and it was used in reference to women, not because they were tropical or because of the way they looked, but in reference to the way we thought vaginas smelled. So that's why people say you're so fishy that you stink, you got a vagina. You know, if I happen to slip up and use plain English, please forgive me. So that was like saying that you're so fishy that, you know, you stink like a woman, basically. Not that you look like a woman, but you're so womanly that we would think you have a vagina. So that's that connotation. Sassy and then Dallas. Sassy?
I wanted to kind of follow up on what Giselle was saying, and I agree with some of that. The one thing I don't agree with is um the taking back power and overly using the word.
Mm-hmm.
Um it, for me personally, I don't feel like using the word all the time is going to take back the power because that
Oh,
wasn't the purpose of it.
sorry, I
Um
want let me reiterate. I was saying not using the word. Also, I just want to add that.
Oh,
okay.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So then yes, I do agree on that. I also, but I do use the N word, but I don't use it like every other word out of my mouth, and it's not in every single sentence. Do I use it? Yes.
And I would
Um,
say that I have been there when you have used it and it is cringy for me.
and you get on me, and I try my best when I'm around you to not use it because I know it is something that you do not like. And I do have
I
people
was
that are around me that also don't like it, so I don't say it. However, in that same conversation, I've had conversations with my uncles who are in their 60s and almost in their 70s who have been very upset with me because I use it. And but I also find the word colored to be offensive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the conversation we've had because I find the word colored to be offensive and I've been called colored.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I'm 39
You
and
were
I've
called
been
colored.
called
When you
colored.
were called colored, who was the person that called you colored? And what was their
It
age?
was it was an older white woman.
Exactly.
She was like in her late 50s, I would say. I'm assuming, I don't really know, but she just looked it. And it kind of took me aback because I had never been called colored. Like no one had ever said that. I've been black my entire life. So when she said it, I just kind of looked at her like, lady, um, huh? And I didn't know how to respond out saying, no, my name's just Dolores. And that was the first thing I said to her. But it bothered me because she said it.
Understood.
And so not wanting to be called colored because it's never happened and wanting to reclaim it, I completely understand that. And I do understand my usage of the N word and the bothersome that it can be. And in that same argument, I have been called that as well in a negative and derogatory way. But for me, um, when the person who said it to me, they were saying it to be malicious and
Understood.
to be harmful. If I'm having a conversation with my friends or my family and I say it, I'm not saying it to be malicious and harmful.
And I think that there is such thing as kitchen talk, things that we say around our family and friends that we don't necessarily say in public. So I do
Yeah.
understand that.
So
I,
I will not use that word outside of certain company because I don't want nobody to slip up and say it around me and me have to pop you in your mouth.
you brought up a perfect point. I grew up with my grandmother saying, only call me what I call myself. So I don't refer to myself in that way. So I don't want anyone referring to me in that way. We're going to see Dallas and then Michaela, you had a question, but you no longer have your hand up. Dallas, you have the floor.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I think for me, from the field that I work in, which is mental health, I see that there is a lot of rational detachment with different generations where things become very common or just jargon that's used and thrown around. Like when we were younger, saying something was so gay or, using, in my world, it's the word retarded. When someone uses that word,
Writing that down.
it's offensive, but we get so used to it because it's language that we say when we're children, like, oh, that's so stupid, that's so retarded, that's so dumb. Which then we start to say, that's so gay, or oh, that's so, people using the word faggoty or things like that. But it's I think it's because we become so rationally detached because it becomes a norm where we hear it in our music, we see it in our movies, we see it on TV. And it's
But
a
there are only
newer thing.
specific things that I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's only specific things that you hear that are denigrating in music, and that's typically with POCs. You never hear, say, white people or Hispanic people, and I'm going to use these terms, saying a song about, hey, wetback this, or hey, the other that. You never hear white people in their song saying cracker, cracker, honky, honky.
Oh no,
Why
and I
is that?
definitely get that. I teach that in my cultural competency class that I teach every week, where I speak about my community, where you would not hear other gay individuals saying like, "Hey, what's up, faggot?" We just don't talk like that to each other because it's not the norm. Where
Correct.
in other areas it becomes a norm, which then makes other people believe that it's okay to use.
And that was what
So
my point was. When other people who look like me are on social media saying, I'm a tranny, then it makes people think that it's okay and acceptable to say that to me.
yes, because they rationally detach from it because they don't understand the blood or the hurt that has come from the history of those words. Because to your point, they may not know or have the same experience as you because of, just the time that you grew up. But it still is here. Racism, sexism is still alive and well. It's just painted with a different brush. And because we allow it in our circles or that kitchen talk that you were speaking about, it can never change unless we remove it from our vernacular, from
I agree.
our verbal.
I agree. Thank you for sharing, Dallas. Michaela, what would you like to add?
So I wanted to add, piggybacking off of Brazil's comment, I definitely identify as someone as I like to say the middle life child, because I'm 35. So I'm not considered an elder, but I'm not considered a youth as well. I think education is universal because one, our elders learn from us that are coming into this new generation. And as well, we're learning from our elders as well as past knowledge and wisdom that they've already went through. What I do say is one word that is offensive to me is drag. And it's cliche, but it's only because as a transgender woman, a lot of people just assume if you're transgender, you do drag. I'm not a performer, I'm not an entertainer. I am a model and I am a supervisor for the company that I work for. So I don't identify that. And I think as far as with education, a lot of people get misconstrued as to being a transgender woman. They automatically assume or put us in that category of, oh, you do drag, or oh, you're a sex worker,
I
and
was
it
going to say that
diminished the
exact
person.
same thing. I think, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Michaela, but
Oh no, good.
oftentimes in our own community, if you are a trans woman, you only can be two things. That's a sex worker or a drag queen or both. And that's just a
Absolutely.
perception that's permeated within our community. And because it's so talked about in our community, it's spread out to the community at
I'm
large.
listening to a Zoom
You're
call
definitely right.
that Mia's putting on
Absolutely.
about
And
using the word
I
tranny.
think that
Dallas, can you mute?
having that education, it could definitely help us divide and conquer as far as, because I'm a woman that supports all of our entertainers. I've done entertainment back in my early 20s, but I stood away from that. And I definitely, in the work environment, I stand for trans women that are in the corporate office that are working. So that's one thing that I would say comes offensive, but it's something that we all know and love because it's something from our culture.
And congratulations on your new job. I know you just got a new job, Michaela, so congratulations on that as well. Thank you for
Thank
sharing.
you.
Amari, what would you like to add to our discussion? Amari? We're going to move on. Mackenzie, what would you like to add to our discussion?
Hey Mia, how are you this evening, my darling?
Good. I'm looking to learn and try to educate as well. I'm looking to do it both ways. I don't know how long you've been here, but we're discussing words. So
Okay.
far the words are fag, gay, tranny, the N-word, queer, ladyboy, crossdresser, dyke, drag, fish, doll, and retarded. Is there anything you'd
Okay.
like to add to that discussion?
Yes. So, okay, so like I'm gonna like kind of piggyback a little bit off of what Michaela said.
Amari, I want to hear you.
I'm gonna piggyback a little bit off of what Michaela said as far as like drag.
Okay.
I don't consider myself a drag queen. I consider myself a trans woman. And I also, as you said, the word doll, I consider myself one of the dolls. I feel like doll isn't like a bad word. Like, I have people that come up to me all the time and they're like, "Oh, hey doll, how are you?"
It can be used as an expression, most definitely.
Yeah, it can be used as an expression. I don't like I've done shows like my whole life and I've been in the spotlight and on stage, and I don't consider myself a drag queen. I consider myself a showgirl.
Mm-hmm.
And
Just for context,
so
I never considered myself to be a drag queen. Even before transition, I always felt I was a female illusionist, not impersonator, illusionist.
Yes, we are illusions that cause confusion.
When I think of the word drag queen, I see in my mind Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and that is not me.
No.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Mackenzie.
No, you're fine. So like kind of just a little bit what Michaela said about like, she doesn't like the word drag because she's not a drag queen. She's a trans woman. And so like I mean, I don't like the word drag queen either because I'm not. I'm a trans woman, so
who sometimes may be a drag performer.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
I get that.
I may be a drag performer, but I'm not a drag queen.
Gotcha. I feel the same way.
Yes.
I feel exactly the same way.
So, I mean, because if we're wearing huge rhinestone earrings and big hair and elaborate makeup, like people are gonna think that we're drag performers. Or
in that moment with the elaborate hair and makeup, they should know that we're being performers and not our everyday self.
Correct.
if you see me 98% of the time, this is what it is. You know what I'm saying? When you see
Okay.
me look, if you ever see me with an eyebrow, I'm doing a show. If not, then don't worry about it.
Or you're emceeing a pageant or doing something.
That part. For sharing. Does
Oh,
anyone else
you're
have any,
welcome.
does anybody else have any other words that they would like to list before we move on to terms?
And
And
just like
terminology?
Dallas said, drag is the art, not the person.
Agreed. It's a job for me. Agreed.
Girl,
Agreed.
period. Period, coins.
Okay. Mila, you have your hand up. You're next. After Mila, we'll go to Harlette. Mila, go ahead and unmute.
Hello, I just wanted to also add, I saw Jeannie said in the chat as well, the C word, the C-U-N-T, that used to always be a trigger word for my mother back in the day. My dad would call her that and she would black out. I know being a trans woman, if I've been called that, that offends me, and a lot of the younger generations are using it a lot with the word fish, like, oh, I'm also serving, C word.
For
So
the sake of
I don't
this
really
live,
care
if you
for
feel
it.
comfortable, you can say the word if you feel comfortable.
I
Or you
don't
can
feel
say,
comfortable saying it. It's
then
not
you can say,
cute. It
see you
doesn't
next
come out right.
Tuesday. See you next Tuesday.
All right, but yeah, the C word. See you next Tuesday.
To answer Giselle Monet's question, I think it's as a trans woman, just physically seeing a trans woman and assuming they're drag queens is what they're saying. Because you're a trans woman doesn't make you a drag queen or a drag performer. Join us.
Can you hear me now?
Harlette,
Yeah,
please
I'm here.
mute.
Can you hear me?
Harlette, you can mute. We're going to hear from Amari.
Any of you? Sorry.
Mute.
Jump to the next
Harlette.
person.
There we go. Amari, join us.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I was just trying to piggyback off of what Michaela said, and then there was also something interesting that I seen in the chat as a question.
Harlette, mute. Okay, Amari.
So it for me as a Black trans woman and working in a professional setting, I feel like being a performer at one point in my transition, the concept of being looked at as a drag queen on and off the stage is I feel like what really kind of deterred me away from pursuing drag long term. Like I did it for a short period of time, but then it also made me feel like people thought I was transitioning because I was doing drag. So I feel like that for me, not thinking of the term drag as offensive, but hearing how she worded it, I was like, okay, I understand that, and it made that resonate with me. And then there was something in the chat that I had seen. It said, "Is it the word? Is it the context, or the purpose behind the word?" And I thought it was like a really good way to acknowledge the intersectionality in regards to the words and how they're used in the different settings that they're used in. Because for me, if I hear the word tranny, I automatically have a negative connotation of a Black trans woman versus thinking of, oh, you hear a tranny. I wouldn't think of what's her name, the Kardashian. I can't think of her name. I'm sorry.
Kim Kardashian.
Caitlyn, for example. I wouldn't think of a white trans woman. So I feel like it really acknowledged the intersectionality for me when it comes to those words and how they're used.
I remember in my writing courses at Florida State, professor asked words and asked us to make a description, and they literally said the word faggot, and I wrote down white boy, blonde hair, blue eyes, white t-shirt, blue jeans, because that to me is what represented a faggot at that time. So I think word association sometimes can bring us to a point, and I understand that. Who else? We're running a little long. I didn't know we were going to have this much discussion about words alone. We didn't even get over to terminology or phrases. Are there any other words? I believe Navi Ho had sent me the word sissy. Can anyone talk about how they feel when they hear the word or when someone calls them a sissy? Is that offensive to anyone, or does anyone like to claim that word and take it back?
Well, I can talk on it. It was something that was used with family members to really demean me as a person. And
Michaela?
because I would act different, because I would say, because I would talk different, act different, whatever, my mannerisms, it was always something that was used in a negative form to demean me as a person. And it is when people say things like that nowadays, sissy, it triggers a memory. However, I understand they're not trying to be, they're using it as, like sissy that walk and things like that. But in my youth, that
Sassy.
was something that was considered that was bad. You were considered a sissy, you were considered weak, you were considered low on the totem pole, nobody cared about you and things like that. So it definitely has a negative connotation to it for me.
Thank you for sharing. Mackenzie, would you like to add anything to the conversation? Mackenzie, you have the floor.
Oh, hey. So like sissy to me, like, I mean, that word, is kind of that word, like, is kind of like when I was like, so when I was growing up, that's what people would call me. They would call me a sissy.
Okay.
And so that word to me is like the previous person was saying, that word to me is kind of like it brings back like a flashback.
So I'm going to interject for a second. Philip Harper, also known as the Nita Man, says that sissy is a gateway slur, usually in your youth. Can we agree that in our youth is when we were called that?
Yes.
At my age now, I could not tell you the last time someone referred to me as a sissy. That just hasn't happened.
Yeah, me either now. But when I was younger, people would refer to me as a sissy.
Giselle Monet said tambourine player. Amari, what would you like? Thank you, Mackenzie. Amari, what would you like to add to the discussion, please? Amari, you have the floor. Okay, Amari, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, I'm sorry, I forgot to put my hand down. I'm doing that now. I apologize.
Okay, that's okay. We're gonna move on to Sassy. Sassy, you have the floor.
I'm going to agree with what Navi said. It was definitely something that was used for my brothers. I have 4 younger brothers, and if they ever like cried or showed any type of sensitivity or were like soft about anything, it's, oh, stop being a sissy. And it was like, it would bother me even as a kid. I was like, why is that the thing you go to? But also it made me feel like being emotional or sensitive was a bad thing. So that for me.
And that word, did that come from a male figure or a
It came from my father.
And I already knew that, but I wanted to ask. And
It came
that's
from my
what makes the
father and
separation
my
between
uncles on my dad's side. Like they would say that to my brothers. And again, for me, they weren't saying it to me because I was a girl. So I was allowed to cry and be soft and emotional, but my brothers weren't. But hearing that and seeing that if you did that, that's how they responded. Why would I want to cry? Why would I want to be emotional? Why would I want to show any of that? So as a young girl growing up, it made me not want to show any of that. So I didn't. So that word it affected not just how my brothers responded to showing emotions, how I responded to showing emotions, because it made me not want to do that because you just said he was being a sissy. So if I start crying, is you gonna call me one day?
Is what causes the fracture in the Black family. Young Black men, regardless of their sexual orientation, they've developed a resentment toward that Black man that called them that, and then they don't want to grow up to be like him.
And they didn't, and none of my brothers did. And like I was very sensitive about it. None of them did. But I was also very sensitive to that word. So like when my ex-husband, one of his brothers, had said that to my son, I immediately had a reaction and was like, don't you ever say that to him. He's allowed to cry. He's allowed to show emotion. And I like responded in such a manner because it triggered how I felt when I was a kid because it was so negative.
Thank you for sharing that. I do want to say on the live that Tasha Long from Tampa, Florida said that on her birth certificate, it still says Negro. So there's that. Michaela, you have the floor.
I would have to say, and long to the words to Sissy, for like you mentioned, in an African American household, it does damage emotional ties. For me, that was identification, like you're too feminine of what you're supposed to be, and it put a milestone on me, and it is very triggering because as a child, hearing Sissy and then not even knowing the terminology of gay or understanding sexuality at that time, that's just being shown as to like that was negative. And so it did give me a negative connotation to those who were presenting that word to me in my youthful days, was just because to me
Okay,
it triggered negativity.
Giselle. Thank you for sharing. We are almost 10 minutes from being in an hour. So if we could make our comments a little shorter, that'd be great. Dallas, I see that you're next. And then after Dallas, we're gonna have Shannon speak. So Dallas, what would you like to say?
So I just wanted to agree, and I know some of the focus has been on, or has been said in the Black community, but that is so prevalent inside the Hispanic community, where we have a mindset and a concept of the machismo mindset of a man is a man. And if you show any sort of being sensitive, which is also the way that we've been called as sissy, is that, oh, he's sensitive.
That's why we have men who can't be good fathers, because they don't know about child rearing.
So I think that one of my takeaways is from this is that we are a lot more alike when it comes to crossing those lines of culture and boundaries, that we all have some of the same experiences, even though we may come from different backgrounds. So a big part of that
That's
is
something that we don't know unless we have conversations like this. I'm Afro-Latina, so I understand the dichotomy of two of those households, but I was never raised in a white household or a Dene household or any of those things, so I can't speak on those. So that's why this conversation is important.
So I just wanted to ask quickly, because of what I work in the corporate America that I work in, I hear this thrown around, and I wanted to throw it to you just to get your opinion real quick, because because you said the word colored, but I hear a lot of times when people are being described as POCs, which is person of color. How does, where does that resonate with the group?
I think when they use the word person of color, it's all encompassing, especially when you don't know someone's ethnic makeup. So they just refer to them as a person of color, a POC. So POC are not just Black people. That's anyone of any tan, basically any non-white person is a POC, person of color.
But would it still feel so adjacent to the word of colored?
I think colored is pointed. I think POC is a softer version. Does that make sense? Thank you for sharing, Dallas. Shannon, you have the floor, Shannon.
Hey, Mia. Hey, everybody.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm out here in Chicago for an event. And one of the things I've noticed as I travel the country is that a big part of the divide between the use of these words has to do with how a person identifies gender-wise. So the cisgender individuals who are not understanding the transgender experience are more likely to be insensitive and throw these words around during a kiki when they're just having fun. And I also noticed that that is a big problem with the gap in education, where the people who are going through the transgender experience or have been through it, the elders, they have so much to teach, but there's not as much interest in learning on the cisgender side of the community.
And cisgender has nothing to do with your sexual identity.
Just completely the gender identity. Like within our rainbow community, if you're cisgender or transgender, there's a huge divide in the desire to learn and the desire to change. And I find myself in the middle of that. Because
I can also admit as well, being transgender myself, that there's not a lot that I know about our lesbian community. I just recently learned, because of Lesbian the Rainbow, another podcast that I'm on, about being a pillow princess and some of these other terms. So I understand what you're saying. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I don't feel cut off at all. I just wanted to put that out there because I consider myself a bridge between communities, because I have love for all the different individuals in our community and all the different experiences, and I want to learn as much as possible. And I want to always be somebody who is able to reach out to the people who don't really find the interest in learning. I don't mean to force it on them, but I will tell them what it is, you know.
And I'll say this too. I've had some conversations with some cisgender women who don't like being referred to as cisgender. I don't think that they understand that that is just a scientific term, cisgender versus transgender. Do you want to expound on that at all?
Yes. Well, I do. It's funny because I identify as she, they, right? But I don't consider myself transgender, or I don't know what to consider myself. I always say I'm curvy, not straight, because I don't know where to put myself. But I do think that within the cisgender community, especially the women, there's this almost like disdain or resentment about having to be labeled.
And you know why that is? From my understanding, calling them cisgender versus calling them women is they feel a demarcation of making, or is a ideal of othering them. A lot of them
Gotcha.
refer to trans women as women because they have to put the trans in there to make sure that there's a notation of difference.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess I was raised different. I was raised by a woman who we didn't really make differentiation. I had gay people in my life my whole life. I was exposed to drag and transgender individuals my whole life. So I didn't really think it was a big deal, and I guess I was raised different, but I think as a person who is seen, I'm a white lady. I'm seen as a cisgender. I'm not very open about my relationships, although I do identify as pansexual. So a lot of people see me as this like straight white cisgender lady. And so I just try to always reach out to those people with that resistance because they see me as this person that they can identify with, if
So I
you
have
know
a
what I
question
mean.
for you. As people having a perception of you as cisgender white lady, do you feel you have to over gay yourself for acceptance? And I'm going to use this as an example, like by running for pageants and things that are intended for people who are gay. Do you feel like you have to do those
Oh,
things to make your existence acceptable?
no. Well, I don't know. I just don't care.
Oh,
I don't
perfect
I don't
answer.
really care. I don't really care what people think of me. A long time ago I did. I don't really care what category people want to put me in. And I'm at the point where you can probably say any word that is meant to harm me and it won't. But I do think because of the perception of who I am from the outside, with the average person, those dance moms of the
Passion.
kids that I teach, all those people, they see me one way. So I do think because of that, I have a huge responsibility to make sure that when people get it wrong, that I make sure they get it right.
Thank you for sharing, Shannon. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
We are
thank
at
you.
the 3-minute mark. This was a lot more overwhelming than I thought it was going to be. I'm learning technology. If you feel like having these open discussions is something we should do, I was thinking bi-monthly, but I'm thinking now maybe each and every Wednesday I need to get together and try to do something of this nature. We didn't get into terminology or any phrases, such as I don't think people understand that back in my day, we used to approach people in public and say, hey, do you know Dorothy? Or are you a friend of Dorothy? And that's how we identified gay people. We didn't have the rainbow and the triangle, or I remember at one point it was if you were gay, you pierced your left ear, things of that nature. I hope this has been eye-opening for some. I hope this has been a teachable moment as well as a learning a moment for some. If you are interested in following and me doing this as a series, I'm open and available to doing this each and every Thursday. Let me know. We can discuss anything. Someone had suggested discussing afterlife care, the importance of insurance and wills. So we're not going to always just discuss things. We'll always discuss something that's pertinent to what people want to know. Is there anything that anyone would like to say prior to us leaving off? I don't feel like we really covered what I wanted to cover, but I'm thankful for everyone's input and for voicing their opinions. Maybe moving forward, we could have a more definitive discussion about specific things. But I am so thankful for everyone who's joined on the Zoom. I am also thankful for everyone who has joined on the live. I feel like these discussions are necessary. And I'm going to use this. When I was a young dumb bitch, I had enough sense to sit around in those dressing rooms and listen to the old hoes. And because I sat around and listened to the old hoes, I'm a whole old hoe now that y'all can sit around and listen to. So I'm thankful for that. I think outside of the LGBTQIA community, the dynamics are not the same. Persons my age don't normally talk to people in their 20s on a daily basis. But because the way and the structure of our community, that's who I see. I'm an entertainer. So I'm often on shows with people who are in their early 20s and 30s. So as a 65-year-old, these are people that I talk to. You know, I don't think the average 65-year-old has 22 and 23-year-old friends. So I am thankful for our community for still seeing value in someone of my age. I thank you guys so much for joining. I feel like this is important conversations that we need to have. My inbox is open for any feedback. I want to try to make this better. This will not be the last one. I want to thank Harold Scott for setting this up, for opening his home, and for making this easier for me to do because I'm not tech savvy at all. To all the youth out there, we want you to learn. To all the youth out there, we want you to teach. For all those in the middle, we want you to learn. For all those in the middle, we want you to teach. And for those elders out there, we want you to teach the things that only your life experience has given you, but we want you to be open to the new things that the youth can bring our way. This has been Community Chat with Mia Inez Adams. Education from the elders, enlightenment from the elders. We appreciate you guys being here. Catch us next Thursday. I think this is going to be a thing. If you have enjoyed this, please let us know. We will be editing down the Zoom and it will be posted on my page. I'm not sure when because I'm not the person who's going to have to do it. But again, I thank you guys so much for being here. I thank everyone who's been on live for being here as well. Let's continue this open dialogue and continue to commune and communicate with each other. I thank you guys for joining us tonight for Community Chat. My name is Mia Inez Adams. Good night.